People applaud you for being so mature. Teachers call you a joy to have in class. You're quiet, never disruptive, never seeking attention. You keep your feelings locked inside, and everyone praises you for it. So you start to believe it's a virtue, this silence, this invisibility. But underneath, something else is happening. While your peers are learning to speak up, to test boundaries, to stumble and grow socially, you're falling behind. You're not practicing the messy, essential parts of development, the ones that actually build genuine confidence and authentic connection. And one day you realize what everyone once called maturity was really anxiety wearing a disguise. This is the hidden world of the well-behaved child, one shaped by what psychologists call conditional love, attachment insecurity, and emotional unpredictability. What looks like exceptional behavior from the outside often masks a child's adaptive response to an environment where love and safety felt uncertain. Here are 3 truths about the perfect child, the child who grew up too soon. First, the perfect child is the child who carries adult emotions. Some children grow up far too quickly, not because they want to, but because they have to. This is what psychologists call parentification, when the natural roles between parent and child are reversed. On the outside, these children look responsible, capable, even wise beyond their years. They're praised for helping out, for being little adults. But beneath that praise lies a painful reality. They are carrying burdens far heavier than their nervous system was ever meant to hold. Parentification takes different forms. Sometimes it's instrumental. The child manages practical responsibilities, like caring for siblings, cooking meals, or acting as the household problem solver. Other times, it's emotional. The child becomes the confidant, the comforter, the emotional anchor for a parent who is struggling. In both cases, the child's developing brain is forced into roles that short-circuit normal growth. Instead of learning to rely on caregivers for safety, they learn they must be the source of safety. Instead of expressing their own needs, they suppress them to protect the parent. But neuroscience shows us that a child's stress response system is not designed to absorb adult emotions. When they do, their body often shifts into chronic hypervigilance, constantly scanning for the next mood swing, the next crisis, the next subtle signal that they need to step in and hold things together. Second, what looks like maturity is often emotional neglect. On the surface, emotional neglect doesn't draw attention, it doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't look chaotic. In fact, it can look like the opposite, like a calm, obedient, mature child. That's why it often goes unnoticed by parents, by teachers, even by the child themselves. But here's the truth. Neglect isn't only about what's done to a child. It's also about what's missing. Emotional neglect happens when a child's inner world isn't mirrored, validated, or welcomed. It's when their sadness is brushed off with. Don't be so sensitive. When their joy is met with indifference. When their anger is punished instead of guided. When their needs for comfort, reassurance, or understanding are quietly ignored. The developing nervous system is built to co-regulate with caregivers. A child cries, and a caregiver soothes. A child feels fear, and a caregiver offers safety. Through these small daily exchanges, the brain wires itself for resilience, trust, and emotional balance. But when those emotional needs are consistently unmet or met with disapproval, the nervous system adapts in a different way. Instead of expecting safety from others, the child learns to protect themselves by shutting down. Instead of expressing emotion, they suppress it. What seems like maturity is really just a child, holding back their emotions and acting older than they are just to survive unmet needs. Third, the mature child is the child who wears the mask. Every child has a true self, spontaneous, curious, emotional, imperfect. But when the environment signals that this self is unsafe, unacceptable, or unlovable, something remarkable happens. The child builds a mask. This mask isn't just politeness or good manners. It's a carefully constructed false self, a version of the child that earns approval, avoids conflict, and minimizes risk. It's the child who's always agreeable, always capable, always fine. The false self is a survival adaptation that shows up when the true self feels too dangerous to reveal. Behind the mask, authentic emotions like sadness, anger, or fear don't disappear. They just go underground. They wait, often resurfacing later in life. On the outside, the masked child is praised. He is so easy to raise. He never causes trouble. They're so mature for their age. But inside, the cost is mounting, because the mask isn't who they are, it's who they've learned to be, just to stay safe. The mask is heavy. It hides vulnerability, but it also blocks intimacy. It earns approval, but makes love feel conditional. It prevents rejection, but it also prevents authenticity. So essentially, the perfect and mature child is the one who was raised to be convenient for others. And that convenience comes at a cost in adulthood, often an anxious one. You never learned that you could make mistakes and still be loved. You never learned that your worth wasn't tied to your performance. Other kids stumbled their way through trial and error. They tried new things, made mistakes, faced small disappointments, and were given second chances. In those moments, they learned failure wasn't the end of the world. It was part of growth. They discovered, I can get it wrong and still be safe. I can struggle and still be loved. Those everyday experiences of falling and getting back up built resilience, confidence, and a solid sense of self. But the perfect child missed out on what psychologists call optimal frustration, the safe, manageable challenges that teach children how to self-soothe and bounce back. Instead, your nervous system wired itself around avoidance, around staying acceptable at all costs. When you grow up carrying adult emotions, when your inner world goes unseen, when you survive behind a mask, those hidden wounds don't stay in childhood. In adulthood, it shows up as hyper-awareness of others, moods, always scanning for subtle shifts. You suppress your own needs, and that protection often turns inward as anxiety. Decisions feel heavier, relationships feel uncertain, achievements never feel enough. This is why so many well-behaved children grow into anxious adults. Not because they're weak, but because they adapted brilliantly to environments that demanded too much, too soon. Understanding this pattern is the first step toward healing. Recovery can begin with small practices. Offering yourself compassion instead of criticism. Taking risks and realizing the world doesn't collapse. Reaching out for support and letting connection feel safe again. Each moment begins to rewire the brain. The goal isn't to become imperfect or irresponsible. It's to develop what researchers call authentic relating, the ability to be genuine while maintaining healthy relationships. Your sensitivity, your attunement to others, your conscientiousness, these aren't flaws to erase. They're gifts that, once freed from the weight of perfectionism, become genuine strengths.